Also, Stephen King and I are not super great friends. Hey y'all, I'm Rylan. Welcome to my channel. I am at home for a couple of more days and I've got another 5 days before I have to go back to work. So I decided to, why not start another reading vlog while I'm here and not really doing anything but reading. This is a genre specific reading vlog, one that I don't think I've ever done before, and I'm very excited about it because I have been reading so much romance recently and I want to kind of switch things up a little bit and dive into one of my quote-unquote old favorite genres that I haven't really picked up in a while. So today I am starting a horror reading vlog. I've got 3 horror books that I would like to read for this vlog. I probably will not finish all these books before work starts back up because I do intend to potentially do a New Year's Eve / New Year's Day reading vlog, but this hopefully will not take me too long to do because school is not back in session for like another month for me, or 3 weeks-ish. So I've got lots more time than I normally do. So the 3 books that I'll be reading are right in front of me. I plan to read Misery by Stephen King. I've had this book on my shelves at home for a long time. I started to read it last year and just didn't end up finishing it, but I have the audiobook for this time around. So this is like my Stephen King comeback. If I don't love this book, I don't think I'll ever read another book by him. I've read 3 of his books and have very strongly disliked 2 of them. So fingers crossed this one ends up working out for me. This is about a famous writer who decides that, I think he decides that he's done writing his most popular series and he kills off his main character, and his biggest fan kidnaps him and forces him to continue writing for her, I believe, is like kind of what this book is about. That's what I remember from when I first read it at this time last year, the first 60 pages or so. So I am excited to read this one. Hopefully the audiobook better keep my attention though. But I've heard this one is so good. I just don't think I was in the correct headspace last year to get too far into this one, but hopefully this time around is better. I will also be reading a book called Tell Me I'm Worthless. I've had this book in my apartment for a couple of months, haven't read it yet. It is a haunted house horror book though, like words are hard sometimes. About Alice, who spent one night in an abandoned house with her friends. Since then, Alice has lived a haunted experience. Memories of that night torment Alice, but when she is asked to return to the house where it all happened, she knows she must go. Together they must face the horrors that happen there. So this is this one. I have a friend from school who bought it around the time that I did and we were going to read it together, but that was a long time ago, and so I'm just gonna go ahead and read it. But this one sounds interesting. It's not too long either. The audiobook I think is like 9 hours. I will probably be doing audiobook for this one and The Shining. Not The Shining, Misery. But I do have physical copies of them as well. I just feel like I read a little bit faster when I have audios going, even though I'll sit and like read the pages at the same time that I have the audio going in my ears. And then the final book that I got is called Let Him In. This is a pretty recent release about Alfie, who wakes up one night to find his twin daughters at the foot of his bed, claiming there's a shadowy figure in their bedroom. When no such thing can be found, he assumes the girls had a nightmare. Whatever this friend is he doesn't want to leave, Alfie will have to come for his own shameful secrets, the dark past of Hart House, and even the balance of reality, or risk taking part in an unspeakable tragedy. Interesting. It sounds like there's a psychiatrist involved in this one. It's about the house. Stasia got an arc of this back when right around the time when I was visiting her in August, and I saw the cover and I was like, I want to read this. And so I got this at Barnes & Noble a couple of hours ago during their end of year sale, and I cannot wait to read it. This one also is not super long. I anticipate being able to get through it pretty quickly, hopefully, but we will see. My plan is to read Let Him In first though. I would like to start this one after I finish my current read that I'm in almost the middle of, so this will be my next book. But I'll hop back in here for every 50% of these books as per usual with my reading vlogs, when I'm only reading, or when I'm reading multiple books. I'll just do every 50% updates. But yeah, I'm gonna start with this one, Let Him In. I'll hop back in here with a better synopsis and my current thoughts on it in a couple of days when I get to page 97-ish. It is a very dreary day outside, and as much as I just kind of want to lay in bed and not do anything, I've actually finished up 2 books today and just reached the 50% mark in Let Him In. I did end up grabbing the audiobook for this one as well. When they're easily accessible and available from my library, I just go ahead and go for it whenever I can. I feel like I engage better with books when I listen through audio, so even though I just bought this, I'm reading it physically as well, but I am also listening to it. So far, it's pretty good. I have no idea what quite to expect. We're still in the build-up. This book is about Alfie and his 2 daughters who are experiencing a presence in the house. Alfie does not want to believe that this presence really exists, but his daughters very much do. 9 or 10 months before, his wife was mysteriously not killed, but she died, and we don't really know why, which is the mysterious part about it. But she was also a twin, and her sister comes to the house to kind of counsel the girls through their grief. They're trying to, I don't know, distance the girls from this presence, but when Alfie vocalizes the fact that he is not real, repercussions find their way like onto the girls, and the girls start getting affected by Alfie's disbelief. So I don't really know like what all is happening or why it's happening, but I am very interested. This is not a super long book. It's barely 200 pages. I am 115 pages into it, and the book is 228. So it's definitely not a very long book. Honestly, I prefer my books that way. Anywhere between like the 200 to 350 page mark is good for me. So that's this one. I'm hoping to finish it up before I go home on Saturday morning. My birthday is tomorrow, and I've got a couple of things that we're doing, but nothing super crazy. I've got 3 hours left of the audiobook, 2 hours left of the 2 hours left of the audiobook. So I feel like it shouldn't be too hard to finish up between the rest of today and tomorrow, but we will see. I want to start another book, not for a reading vlog, just to wrap up a series really quickly. But then after I do that, I am going to jump back into this one. But I'll be curious to see what ends up happening. We definitely have like haunted house vibes, kind of, or the house is involved in some way with this mysterious presence called, what do they call him? The Black Mamba is what they call him. But I don't know, I'm curious to see what ends up happening. But I'll update y'all whenever I get to the end of it. We'll see. The cover just gives off the eeriest vibes, but I don't know who all these people are and how they are connected to the Black Mamba, you know? I guess we will see. But I will wrap it up over the next couple of days, hopefully. I will hop back in here when I do. I am thankfully getting a new tripod tomorrow because this one sucks and is like always crooked for some reason. I don't know why. I'm probably still tilting a little bit, but I don't really know what to do about it anymore. Okay, that might be good enough. Let's see, what am I doing? It is a time in the week. It is 2024. I am back from Christmas vacation, Christmas break, and I did finish Let Him In while I was at home a couple of days ago. I guess it's only been a few days, and I gave this book 2 stars. One of the things that I dislike the most about this genre, and I think what often ends up putting me off to it, even though I do theoretically enjoy the genre, is the fact that so many of these books have to include sex as an element. And I don't understand why. Personally, I don't understand why. because when I read horror books or watch horror movies, I want to be spooked out. I don't think sex needs to be an element of horror in any capacity, and so I'm confused as to why so many books that I do read include it as an element, and a pretty major element of their stories. That is what this one did, and in the end I was just kind of over it. The premise sounds interesting. I explained it in my last clip, I think, especially with the fact that it's two little girls who are seeing Black Mamba, but when the focus kind of gets shifted from them to the relationship of the dad and the girl's dead mother's sister, I kind of just was over everything, which is a bummer because I did have high hopes for this one, and I got it last week and I read it as soon as I got it and I disliked it. So that sucks, but it's fine. I'm giving this book 2 stars. Just not my favorite. I'll probably go ahead and put a spoiler though over that one section though, because I mean, I feel like it kind of is a spoiler, but I feel like this is part of the reason why I don't like Stephen King's books very much, at least the ones that I have read, because a lot of the Stephen King books that I've read have diminished the horror elements for physical actions between 2 characters, and I just don't like that. I don't think it's necessary in this genre, and it bugs me that it's so prominent in this genre regardless. But anyway, nobody cares what I think about that whole aspect of the genre. That's just my opinion. But now I will be moving on to Tell Me I'm Worthless by Alison Rumfitt. This is a haunted house-ish-esque book about Alice. I think I shared the synopsis a little bit already in my intro. But yeah, Alice goes back to this house where she like has trauma from. She has lived a haunted existence. Her friend Isla asks her to return to the house. She knows she must go. Together they must face the horrors that happen there, must pull themselves apart from the inside out, put their differences aside, and try to rescue Hannah, whom the house has chosen to make its own. I did not read that part last time, I believe. Cutting, disruptive, and darkly funny, Tell Me I'm Worthless is a vital work of trans fiction that examines the devastating effects of trauma and how fascism makes us destroy ourselves and each other. I hope I enjoy this one. It sounds interesting. I love reading underrated books. I love reading diversely. I think I like the horror genre. I don't know anymore. Honestly, I've not been having too much luck, I guess, with it yet. But hopefully this book changes things. I do love a good haunted house though, so we'll see what this one ends up being, but I'll update y'all. I'll probably start it this weekend. I would love to get this vlog done by early next week. It is January 3rd currently. I'll probably update y'all this weekend. It is a very short book, thankfully, and once I finish my current read, which is very much not a horror book, I will be diving into this one as my next physical book. So I'll update y'all in a couple of days whenever I get to 50%, share a more specific synopsis, as well as my thoughts on the book currently. I have hesitant high hopes for it, so we will see if it pulls through on those expectations. In a very exciting turn of events this afternoon, I was able to read for almost 90 minutes at work. And I'm super excited because during that time I was able to get to the 50% mark in Tell Me I Am Worthless. Also, I sounded very congested up here. I feel like I just sprayed my nose with stuff to dry it out, so hopefully it goes away in a little bit, but not loving this. I got to 50% of this book. I have started it, and it is both horrifying and fascinating, and I'm very intrigued to see what ends up happening. This is supposed to be a haunted house horror novel. It's a lot more than that too, but that is one of the big tropes in this book. We haven't seen a ton of it yet, but I do foresee it coming. But this book is about a trans woman named Alice and her friend Isla, who spent the night in a haunted house a couple of years before with their friend Hannah. Hannah never made it out alive, and since that night they have both had a lot of trauma in their lives and very mysterious, creepy, paranormal-ish things going on in their lives, and they haven't talked to each other since then. They both have trauma relating to the other person, but they're starting to question if what they think happened that night was real, or if it was the house who did to them what they think the other person did to them, if that makes sense. And they haven't been in contact since that night in the house, but Isla thinks that they need to meet up again. I think she's going to try to convince Alice to go to the house, to go back to where it all started and get some answers as to what is going on in their lives. But that's what this one is about. The author includes a very important content warning that I'm very glad that I read at the beginning of this book, because I do feel as though content warnings are super important, in my opinion. This book especially, I think I would have been upset if I had gotten to certain points of this book without having known that content warning beforehand. I don't normally get upset by things that I read, but this book definitely would have done it for me if it had not been for those content warnings. So I'm going to read that in a minute. I wanted to mention that this book, I was like lost my train of thought. I wanted to mention that this book talks about or uses a lot of very offensive things, not for the sake of for the sake of showing the offense of them, if that makes sense. So there have been some very difficult parts to read in this book. There is one point when I was reading during my 90 minutes of reading during work today when I thought that I might be DNFing the book, but once we moved past it, I was able to kind of settle back down a little bit, not be so revolted by what was happening in the book, which is the purpose of this book, and continue reading. And I'm very intrigued about this whole house aspect because we have three perspectives. One perspective is Alice, one perspective is Isla, and then the third perspective is actually of the house. And though we haven't gotten a ton of those moments yet with the house, it's becoming more prominent, and I'm excited to see where we go with it because I love a good haunted house. Would never go inside of one myself, even like the Halloween attractions, but I do like them in books and movies. So I am curious to see where this one ends up going with that one. But I'm gonna read the content warning for this one super fast because I do think, especially in this book, it is super important. But the author, Allison, writes, "Tell Me I'm Worthless" is a book about two things, primarily, and those things are trauma and fascism. I thought it important to include a content warning here at the start to say that. In dealing with those topics, the novel covers racism, anti-Semitism, transphobia, rape, both in abstract and graphic ways, self-harm, and suicide. I will be putting those all in the description down below as well, but I do want to mention that because I'm glad I read it, because there are some very hard things that happen in this book, but also some very interesting things and very intense things between the characters in their own lives, and as they start to come together, hopefully to explore this haunted house and figure out what happened the night that they all went in there and Hannah, their third friend, never came back. So that is where I'm going to be heading to next. But that is this book. I hope to finish it today or tomorrow. It is Friday. I've got one babysitting gig this weekend, but other than that, no plans, and I plan to take advantage of it. And once I finish this one, I can hopefully move on to Misery. And not hopefully, I will be moving on to that one next. And hopefully I can get through it this time versus soft DNFing it. But I do think the audio will help with that one. But I'll hop back in here in a couple of days with my final updates, and we will talk more then. I just got back from the gym, which is why I look like this. I need to take a shower in a little bit. But while I was working out this morning, I did finish Tell Me I'm Worthless. This book was very interesting. It is probably the most, out of all the books I've read in the horror genre, this is probably the one that I would classify the most as horror. I feel like I've read, not every book in the horror genre, but I've read a good amount, I feel like, that could be classified as horror. Maybe not really, I don't know. Maybe I haven't really read all that many books in the horror genre. There are 5 or 6 or 7 that come to mind right now that I've read for my Halloween readathon in the past and things like that. But it was very good, I would say. I'm gonna give it 3 stars. Rating a book like this is hard because it is very graphic. It is very raw. And it's I liked it, but I was also repulsed by parts of it for the purpose of being repulsed. That was the point of this book. But I feel like 3 stars is a good rating for me for this one. I especially really enjoyed the parts with the haunted house and the effects that that house had on the main characters. I feel like I've read, man, now I'm like forgetting every single book that I've read. I've read a couple of haunted house books or books with that trope in it, whether it's a actual horror book or more of like a thriller. This was the best haunted house that I've seen done in the books that I've read, so I can appreciate that. It's hard to recommend this one though. I would definitely recommend checking out all the content warnings for it. I read the list in my last clip, but it's tough. It's a hard read, but I liked it too, to an extent. I definitely had to stop listening to it last night because the sun was going down, and the audiobook is very interesting in one of the parts with the haunted house. Like the audio like moves in and out in a very, not dreamlike state, but kind of, but it was really creepy because the voice kind of got a little bit lower as it moved in and out of the audio, and it was very disorienting, and I was like, I can't read this anymore tonight. So I figured that since the sun didn't really come out this morning, but since it was light again this morning, I could finish it up while I was at the gym. But yeah, that is this one. That is this one. I don't know how Misery by Stephen King is going to line up compared to this one. Let me go grab that book really fast. That will be my next and final read for this vlog. So my final read will be Misery by Stephen King. I also have the audiobook for this one. This is about an author named Paul who is traveling sometime and he ends up getting kidnapped by his biggest fan. I guess he concluded the series that he was writing, or he killed off his main character, and his biggest fan is not happy about that. So she kidnaps him. He is like not able to walk because he was in a car accident, I believe. And yeah, she has her way with him, trying to force him to continue this novel and pretty much torturing him for not. I'll give a better synopsis when I get to 50% of this book. That's what I remember from this one, from like the 50 or 60 pages that I had read of it. But there's probably more to it. This book is kind of a chunk. I mean, I guess it's only 358 pages, but the audiobook is 12 hours long, so I'm a little bit nervous, but hopefully listening to it is better than just reading it. Also, Stephen King and I are not super great friends. I have only enjoyed one of his novellas. I have read 3 of his books total: It, The Mist, and 1922, and the only book that I kind of liked was 1922. The Mist and It were both 1 star for me. So this is my last chance to change my mind about his books. I feel like this is the one that has captivated me or interested me the most since hearing about it, and I do want to give it a shot. So we're going to try it again right now. It'll be my next physical read. I'm going to start something on my Kindle too today once I wrap up my arc that I'm reading. But yeah, I'll hop back in here. Probably not until next week with my first update because it is a longer book. But we will see what ends up happening. I'll hop back in here in a couple days with my first update for Misery by Stephen King. I feel like this wouldn't be a horror reading vlog without Stephen King, so it's my good excuse to try him out one last time. I am actually super excited for this vlog update because in a surprising turn of events, at least for me personally, I am thoroughly enjoying Misery so far. I think it might help that I have this on audiobook because I feel as though listening to most books helps enhance my reading experience. But this one has been thoroughly enjoyable so far in a way that horror and creepy books can be enjoyable, if you know what I mean. I guess I probably wouldn't quite classify this as horror yet. It's definitely giving thriller vibes. Isolation is going on right now. There's definitely an element of torture that is also going on, but I'm enjoying it. I think if I had just read this one physically like I had the first time, I probably wouldn't be sitting here saying that I'm enjoying it, but because I have the audiobook, I really do feel as though it's helping. I anticipate finishing this book up hopefully sometime early this week. It is Sunday, and I think it's going to be a fun time. I will say that Stephen King very much frustrates me sometimes with the length of some of his random descriptions. I feel as though in a lot of his books he goes on and on and on and on and on about things that he doesn't need to do that for. This one is not quite there yet, but there have been a couple of moments when I'm like, all right, let's get back into what we're doing with the plot and keep going there. But I am liking this one so far. To give you all a quick synopsis in case you are new to this book is about a writer named Paul Sheldon who is kidnapped by his biggest fan. When she finds him, I don't know if she plans like the car accident, but he's in a car accident in the middle of a blizzard, and his biggest fan just so happens to stumble upon him in the middle of nowhere, kidnaps him, nurses him quote unquote back to health. However, she is forcing him to continue his series that he had just ended, during which he killed off his main character. Annie is the kidnapper. She is furious about it and pretty much is gonna kill him if he does not produce a conclusion, or a better, either a conclusion or just like the next book in the series. I feel like she's gonna keep him there, or I feel like she wants to keep him there forever to continue writing Misery's story, who is the main character of the series that Paul has spent the last however many years writing and becoming a best-selling author for. But he is still very injured, pretty much doped up on drugs, like painkillers all the time because he is in so much pain. And Annie is very much pulling the strings. Nobody knows where he is. They're very isolated. She definitely has done something in her past that we don't know about yet that resulted in her being on trial somewhere in Denver or somewhere in Colorado. I think it's Denver. We don't quite know what yet, but she kind of keeps almost mentioning things about it but then stopping, and so Paul knows that she's done something and that she's, I forget what the word is that he calls her, like she's not okay. Yeah, but he doesn't quite know what yet. So I'm really enjoying it. I'm hoping to finish it up in the next couple of days. It is very much a chunk. I feel like I've been listening to this book for a long time and have just now reached the halfway point, but I do anticipate it getting better as we continue going now that we're like kind of into the meat of things, but we will see. I do think this cover definitely gives off all like the creepy winter vibes though. I would love it if we got some snow here like we do in the book, but I don't know if we're gonna get snow this year. I would love it though. But anyway, I'll hop back in here with my final update and my vlog wrap up in a couple of days hopefully. Fingers crossed I am enjoying it, because if so, this might be my favorite Stephen King book, which isn't saying a lot because I've disliked most of his books that I've read, but maybe this will kind of be his redemption. But I will talk to you all in a couple of days. So I have pink eye this morning or today, so I'm not at work, which is why I am trying to cover up my face as much as possible, because my eye is very swollen and I look disgusting, and this is just not a great way to end this reading vlog, but it's fine. But I got a new hat yesterday in one of my subscription boxes, so that's fun, a good excuse to wear it. But last night, before the pink eye occurred, I finished Misery, and I actually think this might be my favorite Stephen King book, which isn't saying a lot because I have strongly disliked almost every single book of his that I have read, but this one was super fun. It was very graphic at parts. Annie Wilkes was certainly a very interesting character, definitely not somebody that you want to root for. And Paul wasn't like a super likable character either. He was fine, he wasn't my favorite, but I do think that this was a really fun isolated setting with very unlikable characters, which I do enjoy in this genre slash in thrillers. Is this technically horror? I don't know. I was never super like creeped out by anything, but I also never felt any like, I don't know, like super intense, or like there was no plot twists in this book really, which I guess probably wouldn't maybe make it a thriller either. So maybe it is more horror, but like a very slow burn build up. I did really enjoy it though. Content warning though for kidnapping, lots of murder, body mutilation slash amputation, infant deaths in the past that we learn about. Yeah, I'll have a full list in the description down below as per usual with my reading vlogs, but I am thoroughly impressed for the most part. I will say that I don't love the way that Stephen King writes his minorities. I have heard that he doesn't do that as much in his newer books. That's not an excuse. I don't know if I'm going to keep reading his stuff at this point, I would be curious to see if that changes at all in some of his newer releases, because the way that he writes, again, his minority characters in it and in this one as well, it's not super prominent in this one, but there were a couple of times when I just got really frustrated with him because, you know, he's been given this platform as an author and he uses it to write not the best things, or in not the best way about minority groups, and I don't love it. So I do just want to throw that out there. That was one of my biggest issues with it by him. The way that he wrote about one of the main characters in their friend group was just really inappropriate and wrong. The way that he talked about the female body was also wrong. Thankfully, that was not an issue in this one with the female body, at least nothing that I like picked up on and got uncomfortable by. But when I read it by him 4 years ago now, almost 3.5 years ago, whenever I read it, I was so angry over how he wrote about the body of a teenage girl, because it was so inappropriate in my opinion, and the way that he oftentimes uses sex in his books to further the plot, which I again don't find necessary in horror a lot of times. Thankfully that was not an issue in this one either, so that is good. But there were a couple of lines about some of his fictional characters that Paul was writing that I was not a huge fan of. Overall, not my least favorite Stephen King, which is exciting. Will I read anything more from him? Probably not. I had a good run. I've read 4 of his books, hated 2 of them, was surprised by 2 more of them, and enjoyed them for the most part. But yeah, that is this reading vlog. So that wraps up this horror reading vlog. I started it back home over Christmas and wrapped it up in early January, so that's great. I will go ahead and give just a quick recap for y'all. First, I read Let Him In by William Friend and gave this book 2 stars, and then I read Tell Me I'm Worthless by Alison Rumfitt and I gave this book 3 stars, and then finally I read Misery by Stephen King and I gave this one 4 stars. But that's all that I have for this reading vlog. If you have any good horror book recommendations, feel free to comment down below and let me know what they are. I do think I like the genre. I just also have a lot of issues with the way that things are portrayed in a lot of them. But if you have any good recommendations for me, feel free to comment down below and let me know what they are. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you all in the next one.